All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, youth baseball community. We're going to dive into part 2 of our interview with Coach Angelo Gingerelli. Coach Gingerelli's day job is a strength and conditioning coach, has been for the past couple decades at Seton University out in New Jersey, very well-known college back east. Working with all sports, and more specifically baseball and softball. When he clocks out, Coach Gingerelli has immersed himself helping out with the local Little League, the local softball league. So it's the best of both worlds in terms of knowledge, an advanced level of knowledge, but understands what's needed to be successful and what's not needed to be successful at the youth level. We start off by talking about the different times of the year and what players should prioritize with regard to strength and conditioning and athleticism building at the different points in the year during the different seasons. He shares a couple great tips about how youth coaches can incorporate moving the body, getting players stronger and faster during practice. He talks about whether we should do sprint work before or after strength work for those ages where that's applicable. Coach Gingerelli shares his recommended sprint training routine regimen with us. We talk about the Reebok pump, and we talk about his new book that preps high school players for that jump to college if they're fortunate enough to have that opportunity and they work hard enough to get that opportunity. So we cover a lot of cool stuff, a lot of good information in a short amount of time. The audio isn't the best on this interview, but it doesn't mess with the message that we're going to hear in part 2 of the interview here with Coach Angelo Gingerelli. This is part 2 of 2. Highly recommend going and checking out Coach Gingerelli's book. It's on Amazon. It's titled The Next 4 Years, Compete, Win, and Thrive in College Sports. I know most of us here are immersed in the youth baseball level, but I know we do have some high school coaches. In fact, one of my OG listeners, one of my original listeners from 5+ years ago reached out this week and said he's back in the coaching game for the 3rd time. Coach Cosimo, one of my OG listeners. So I know high school coaches and players listen to this podcast. In fact, I know college coaches listen to this podcast. With that said, if you have a high school age kid, I highly recommend reading the book, The Next 4 Years by Coach Gingerelli. And let's say you have a junior high age kid or kids. It wouldn't hurt to read the book, and then it could give you the mindset of how to prepare your kid, your players, for the next level, which is high school, right? So it can give you ideas and a mindset of how to prep for the next level. In the book, it's for college, but why not use that mindset that you can learn from reading the book, The Next 4 Years by Coach Gingerelli, to get your players ready for the next 3 to 4 years of high school baseball or softball or whatever sport. So with that said, let's dive into part 2 of our interview. Generally speaking here, let's say we had a 10-year-old baseball player, a softball player. What would be like one guideline? Or let's say the spring season is their main season. Let's say they're playing fall ball. Let's say they back off in the winter and they're playing some kind of summer, a little bit of summer ball too. How would you break up those seasons and maybe one overarching guideline for strength and conditioning those seasons?
I would say for their spring season, if that's the most important, like you just outlined, their focus is based. Be ready for the games, be mentally locked in, feel loose and ready to go and run and hit at the games. If that means not doing a ton of practice, whatever that is for you at that age, be ready for baseball, right? In the summer, I think my goal would be to get that young man as good at moving as possible, right? So great running mechanics, great jumping and landing mechanics, and just hammer home basic movement mechanics that kid's probably not getting in the elementary school phys ed class at this point, right? In the fall and winter, I would try to get as strong as possible. And what that means for a 10-year-old is probably great at push-ups, great at pull-ups, great at some resistance band movements for the shoulder and upper extremity, right? Great at lunging, great at jumping as high as possible, stuff like that. It really builds on work capacity, right? One thing we're seeing at all levels, with even our best athletes, particularly your call them the anaerobic sports like baseball and softball, where we're saying, well, I don't have to run, I'm a baseball player. Yeah, but if you're 18 and you get winded on the way from the locker room or the dugout to the field, you're having a life problem, not a baseball or softball problem, right? So develop that work capacity where if you play a doubleheader, you're not winded and need 3 days off afterwards, right? And then when that season comes around, just be baseball ready again and go and hit it again as hard as you can. I think if you do that for the couple years when you're 10 and 11, when you get to be, let's say, 12 or 13, maybe that off-season changes actually lifting weights and putting on some muscle mass and getting strong. Start thinking about your diet and keeping your body fat reasonably low and eating a good diet of whatever that means to you, but just trying to get it as strong as possible in that off-season and maintaining it as best you can during your competitive season.
Awesome. So are there some ways that youth coaches can incorporate moving the body into their practices so players can improve their performance and long-term health? There are ways, but what are some specific ways that you'd recommend for youth baseball?
I would say this. I think a lot of your listeners are probably on board with this, but be relentless about the basics and the fundamentals when you're coaching a practice, right? Be great. How do you do a grounder? How do you stay? Everything. Be as good at that as you can. One thing I say to head coach a lot is put your assistant coaches on that duty if you can, right? If you're running the practice, but assistant coach A is running the grounders, make sure he or she knows how to do that, right? And make sure they're staying on every kid. Hips down, chest up, whatever it might be in that coaching scenario, right? But use your assistant coach as best you can. And I would say if you got a group that will listen and be attentive, get some kind of dynamic warm-up going where we're doing some better run mechanics, we're doing some A-skips, stuff like that, and maybe start doing some walking lunges, body weight squats, push-ups, just trying to get the body moving in a good direction and then go to your baseball, softball stuff right after that. But I think that's the best way to implement it every day. And the other thing I would do too, as you get a little bit older, this is one thing I've changed my idea on a little bit, but I think baseball is a sport where you go from still to all-out sprinting so often, right? It just happens. You hate whatever, the other guy hates whatever happens, you got to go. And I started this with my college kids now, and doing it with the younger kids as well. Do some kind of close to max speed sprinting almost every day, right? So for example, our ball guys, we used to do 2 conditioning days a week during fall ball. And let's say we would do 20 60-yard sprints, 10 each day, right? Now I'm taking them before we lift. We'll do 5 a day for 5 days and get the same amount of working, say, over a longer period of time. Because I think we're seeing it injury-wise, our bodies are not, if we don't train that movement every day, our body's not really used to doing it, right? So if you want to decrease the inches there, the hamstring pulls, calf pulls, stuff like that, sprinting or getting real close to sprinting almost every practice a couple times is probably a better option than just hitting your more reps once or twice a week.
You recommend the sprinting routine be done before a strength and conditioning routine?
I think it depends how much sprinting they're talking about, right? So if we're going to go to say, for example, you're going to do a dynamic warm-up on a field outside the weight room and then go into the weight room. So just for example, at the college level, we have a good-sized weight room, but not enough for 35 baseball guys to warm up at the same time. So we're doing a warm-up on a basketball court, and then we go to the weight. I'll throw a couple of, we'll do some duels. We'll start at a 50% sprint down a basketball court, walk back. We'll go to 3/4 speed, and then we'll do a couple full speed, and then go to the weight room, right? And that's if we're just trying to get our legs under us, get a little central nervous system activation, then we go on the lift. Now, when we do those speed workout days, and we're not doing 3 sprints, we're doing 13 of them maybe, those days, ideally, we would lift in the morning and then come back and dedicate the afternoon to that, or maybe just do that day. But I think we're just doing a handful to kind of get moving. That's a great way to end a dynamic warm-up. I think if you're doing like a speed session, that should probably be either a day by itself or maybe after the weight room.
Okay, so let's say you have like a junior high kid who's starting to get into the gym and work out. You'd recommend, if possible, to do the sprint work before. If it's a heavy volume of sprint work before going into the gym, right?
Or another day completely. Yeah, but if it's a reasonable amount of sprint work, I don't think hitting that before the gym or before practice is really that big of a deal.
I want to hit on something real quick before I talk just about the sprint work. First, I think what you hit on something there about coaching up the other coaches. And this doesn't just have to be the manager or the head coach. This could be assistants helping out the other assistants. At the youth level, there really is no head coach, right? At the college level, the head coach gets paid more and they're the ones doing hiring. It's different. In pros, it's different. And even the high school level, there is the buck stops here kind of thing. But in youth coaching, the only thing the buck stops with is like The head manager needs to go up to the umpire before the game. And if there's, a meeting with the league, the manager go, whatever. But other than that, everybody's just really the same because nobody's getting paid more than the other. And I liked your idea of what you mentioned, your message of coach up the coaches. And I think I will sum this up. Coaches, the first thing we should do when we find out we are coaching a team or as an assistant or as the manager or the head coach, the first thing we need to do, and this is counterintuitive, we think of how we need to coach up our players, the drills, how we need to do our warm-up, how we have to coach up our practices. I truly believe the first thing we need to iron out, at least have an outline for, a blueprint and some messages and maybe a meeting, is coaching up the other coaches or working with the other coaches to make sure you're on the same page and you're unified and you have a plan. So coach up the coaches or get the coaches to coach each other up, then go coach the players. And I know at the college level that and the pro level, of course that happens because there's meetings after meetings after meetings. But at the youth level, they're not meetings. You come from your day job. I think it's very important you hop on a Zoom call and or a phone call or get together, talk about it over golf and come together on a plan so you can go out there and be on the same page. So coach up the coaches before you think about coaching up the players. The sprinting thing makes me think I played football in high school and we had a very successful football program. And the strength coach, we had the defensive coordinator who went on to be the head coach. He was a high level strength and conditioning coach. You have your entry levels, of course. He was up. He had moved up. He'd been doing it. He was nationally renowned. He had national champions in shot put and discus. He was really good. Our strength and conditioning program was ahead of everybody's, even in Southern California, where you have the cream of the crop in terms of football teams and high school football. He was ahead of everybody in the 80s, back in the late 70s, 80s, and definitely in the 90s when I was in high school. But one thing that stood out, Angelo, that shocked me, looking back now, it shocks me. We never, ever trained sprinting. Never trained for sprinting. And I look back and I go, well, the teams that won, and it was all strength. It was all based off of just moving the other team. I'm thinking the reason that program didn't have more success than it did, it had a lot of success, my high school football program. The reason it didn't have more success, I think truly is based off of speed because it was well coached, organized, smart coaches. It had everything. It had the talent. It had the amount of players. It had the funding, didn't have speed. So when you get a guy like me and a couple other guys who could outrun the other team, yeah, we would dominate. In those years, we were better than others because we were just faster. But then I realized we were just faster because we genetically, I trained for it on my own. And I also I just genetically faster. And so I thought, geez, I look back now and I go, if we would have just practiced sprints like you mentioned, just 15, 12, 10 sprints a day, full speed, short distance sprints, I think we would have went 10-0 my senior year because the team we played that beat us had more speed than us. And the teams that beat us every year in the playoffs were just a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure how old you are or what era that was, but at least in my experience, that there's been a change in strength and conditioning professionals in the last, say, 15 years. I think prior to the early 2000s, everybody that got in that profession was we'll call it a weight room guy. They loved lifting. They were in either powerlifting or bodybuilding, and they wanted to apply that to sports. I'm part of that, right? And I've had great strength coaches back in the 90s, but there was really a lack of idea of lifting weights and being strong is one where it has sport performance, right? But it's also speed, agility, quickness, flexibility, mobility, all these other things. Other boxes have to be checked. And I think in the last 10, 15 years, just the younger generation of strength coaches just understand that a little bit better, right? And just kind of better to do. But the thing I say to young players all the time and parents of young players, probably the best thing you could do for your student athlete, whether it's a baseball player, football player, whatever it is, if they have an off season, any time of year where they're not playing that sport, put them in a track and field program. Run track and get good at running. Because you know what no athlete has ever said? I'm too fast. It's a problem. I'm too fast on the field, right? So I think if you can get involved, it sounds funny, but it's real, right? Nobody's ever too fast. So maybe if you're playing baseball in the spring, but your high school or your middle school has a winter track team, try to get on that and listen to the track coaches and get mechanically sound at running, and then you will be better on the base path of baseball, right? A lot of towns, mine included, offers a summer track program for young kids, right? And the idea behind that is that's going to be a feeder system for the high school track and field program, but a lot of those kids are going to do track and field one season and football, baseball, soccer, whatever it is. I think that's a really great thing. But if you can do that, and the younger you do that and establish those good habits, the faster you're going to be when you get older.
Get your kids sprinting. Speed. Get your kids faster. You don't need equipment for this. Just train for speed. Let's say we have a 10 or 12-year-old team. How far should they be sprinting? Should they time it and keep track of that stuff? Or should they race against each other?
I think keep it on the shorter side of things, right? Keep it, let's say, 30 yards and down, something like that. Get really good coming out of that base stealing stance and get really good at reaching that top end speed as fast as you can and maybe wrap it up about 30 yards somewhere. Now, as we get older, we got to get a 60. We need time on that. With your young kids, I think maybe go group by group, right? If you could do some races and kids will take it seriously and not hurt themselves while they do it, you'll blow out a hamstring when you're that age. Maybe you could do it with a more mature group. On the timing thing, I don't know how valuable that is with younger kids, right? And the main reason being that you're going to give them their 60 times, say, and they're going to go online and realize they are twice as slow as a major leaguer or a college player, right? Is that a good thing psychologically for a young player? I would say probably not. I would say let's focus on getting a great start, coming out of base stealing stance like you mean it and you're going to be effective, and getting the top speed as fast. And as a coach, talk that up. That, oh man, you had a great first step, really push the ground behind. The knee drive was great today. And then as they get older, then you got to put some numbers on it and time it out as best you can. But I don't know if there's a reason with these younger kids to give them these numbers when just physiologically they're not old enough to run a time comparable to an 18 or 19-year-old under 12 or 13.
So how can we coach individual players to prepare for the next level while putting their team in a good position to win games? So this could be getting ready for next season or for junior high to high school. How do we help get those individual players prepared while also making our team success a priority?
Right. This is the thing that's so much easier said than done, right? Because the idea is, I think as adults, we should all be all about the player achieving his or her best long-term outcome, right? But at the end of the day, we also want to win games. We also want to show the kids success. That's why they stay in the game. And if you're a travel ball coach, if you're a basketball coach, the success of your team directly impacts your career, your resume, and your social media presence, right? So you got to find that delicate balance of putting all the kids in a position to win versus a long-term development. So I think a lot of people in my group and older, they think pitch counts are ridiculous, think load management is ridiculous. I think in reality, the research shows sometimes you got to kind of put a governor on this and not let your best pitchers start every game or throw 100 pitches when they're 12 years old, that kind of thing. So I think you want to be as safe as possible, put the team in a position to win, and then have everybody realize, and again, I'm saying it's easier said than done, this 12-year-old county championship game is important. We all want to win it, right? But next year, you're all going to play in high school, and if you're getting Tommy John at 16 because something that happened now, we all did something wrong, right? So we got to kind of preach to the parents and the kids that, we want to win this game right now, but we're all trying to wake up and play tomorrow, live the fight another day, and do that in as best and safe a way as possible.
Speaking of injuries there, are there any programs or exercises, and I know you've talked about some already, you've talked about quite a few. Are there any that we haven't talked about? Any programs or exercises that younger players can perform that might help them avoid the common baseball injuries as they progress in baseball?
I'm not sure, and the research is really fuzzy on this, right? Really a gray area of if you do X, you will not experience injury Y, right? That's being honest. That's what the research shows us, right? At the college professional level. What I think you want to look at as a coach, not a sports medicine person, look at the parts of the body that are commonly injured in that sport. So in baseball, we're looking at a lot of shoulder stuff. We're looking at some elbow stuff, particularly more recently. We can argue that the Tommy John phenomenon of the last 10 years is really more linked to elbow immobility or shoulder stuff and elbow stuff. The surgeries at the elbow, obviously. And then look at ways we can get as strong and as mobile as possible in those areas, right? So develop good flow mechanics from a young age and keep a decent idea of how much kids are throwing and how hard they're throwing, and then just try to stay within the parameters that have been published and be smart about that as best you can. But I think just be smart about training the body, and then realize that, sometimes a 300-pound bench press is great. It's impressive in the gym, but it's stressing a shoulder that throws a ball thousands of times a week with 3 plates on a bench press bar, that might not be the best example, right? Or the best scenario. So be smart about the way you do that and manage your load you're asking of a player as best you can over the course of a year.
So there's some trade-offs. Maybe if you want to be a baseball pitcher, your goal of benching 400 pounds might not work well together.
Maybe you'll pick up some dumbbells and worry about throwing the ball as hard as you can, right? Are you real strong with other ways to do it? But let's be smart about that range of motion and what you're forcing your body to do. So maybe your body's not meant to do at this point, but then attack and go hard at these other things and make yourself bigger, stronger, and faster.
Love it. Your take, just listening to you for the last, hour we've been recording here, you are an 80-20 coach. Your take on the injuries, your take on the fundamentals, you're an 80-20 principle. Really, that's what got me into the name of the 80, names of whatever don't really have too much meaning. But I did think I want to really focus on the fundamentals of baseball. I want to make sure we focus on the big parts of, like, when we're talking here, strength and conditioning, youth strength and conditioning. And I really always comes back to the 80-20 rule, especially at the lower levels and even up through high school. When you get to college, then you can start really hitting those 20% of things that are the fine details. And the professional level, they're just trying to squeeze out the last 5%. Really great having you on, because I can tell your knowledge is through the roof. You also have that 80-20 viewpoint and approach to this. I think it's the optimal way to approach coaching at every level and definitely at the lower levels.
I agree, man. There's no question about that. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm sad, like everybody else and all your listeners and yourself, just trying to do the best I can for these young players and young kids.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate your time. Well, first, before you leave, tell us about your book. Tell us about your book and how it can benefit youth players and coaches. I know, it's called The Next 4 Years, Compete, Win, and Thrive in College Sports. I know there's stuff in here that the youth coaches, parents, players can learn from. Tell us about your book.
I really appreciate that, Coach Bo. So I put it out November 1st, 2024. And the idea was this: I've been at Seton for 20 years. I've been in college athletics for 25 plus. And every place I've been, every year I've been, almost all of our student athletes come to campus their freshman year just unprepared for what college is like. Now, that's the weight room, the field, the classroom, the dining hall, the social situation. All of it is completely different, right? And I think over the last 10 plus years, I've done a great job helping our student athletes adapt to life on campus and get ready to play at that next level. And I just thought I had a good version that would work for just about everybody. So I tell people all the time is, if you or your child signed a scholarship to play in college, you should have the biggest party, have a ball, being a local celebrity for a couple of days. The odds you beat to attain that scholarship are astronomical. You didn't get injured. You stayed mentally invested in the sport. You're making every travel team, but it's not a finish line. It's a starting line. Because a scholarship is not a gift. No one's just handing you money because they like you. It's, we're going to pay you to do this job for us, and now it's time to go win games. And in my case, it's win baseball and softball games. We're the toughest competition in the country, right? So what does that mean in the weight room? What does that mean in a conditioning session? What does that mean in a film session or the batting cage or whatever it might be? And I feel like I wrote, at this point, I believe it's the only book about this, of how to prepare. So what I say, if you sign that NLI, or it's called a contract now, they kind of changed the nomenclature this past month, but in the spring of your senior year, and you have till, let's say, September 1st to get ready, it's a 12-week program to get ready and be show up to campus ready to go. So it's got a value to players that sign that national letter of intent and ready to play. And I think for coaches out there, it gives them a recipe and a playbook of what's going to happen with players when they go to that next level. So if you're a summer ball coach, travel ball coach, and a lot of your kids are getting to play in college, this is the best way to prepare them to be ready when they get there, right? So I think the information hasn't really been out there, and I'm pretty happy to be at least one of the first people getting info out to a bigger demographic and bigger population it's ever been available to before.
This topic is excellent, and you're right. I don't remember seeing another book on this specific topic. I think you're onto something here, Coach. Where was this 25 years ago, and I was getting ready for college? If I was a college coach, I would send every recruit that signed, I would send them videos of our entire practice plan, drills. Maybe you put it behind a password, whatever, but they should know what every drill looks like. They should see the workout that you put together. They should see that. They should see a video of all the players doing the workout in the gym, on the field, the batting practice, the rotations. They should see all that. Now, it doesn't need to be a 5-hour production. It could be all put down in maybe 30 minutes or an hour. This book right here is the next level of the mindset from not just sports, but the holistic getting ready for college sports. You didn't ask me to plug this book. You didn't even mention this. So I want the listeners to know. Angelo didn't come on here and say, hey, I'll come on if you plug my book. He didn't mention the book. I was looking at it. I was reading through it, and I'm going, oh, okay, I'm going to bring this up because it's only fair. Angelo's dedicating a lot of time here to give us so much valuable information. So I just want to put that out there.
And I super appreciate that. I love that comment. Thank you very much. Oh, real quick for the listeners, one thing I say all the time, if you're lucky enough to be recruited to play in college, whether it's baseball, softball, any other sport, just remember this thing. Most coaches are not liars. They are salespeople, okay? So you go on that recruiting trip and you see the shiny plates in the weight room and the great batting cages and the packed baseball stadium on a series weekend. That's real. That's a real part of the experience, right? But there's also hundreds of hours in that weight room, hundreds of hours in that batting cage. If where we are, it's practice. We're shoveling snow to practice for some of the year. And that's part of the experience too, right? I think you got to take that in. And my all the time is the best thing you can do to prepare yourself, other than, of course, buying this book, is the day after you sign your contract to play, now it's time to go to work. Call the head coach, the assistant coach, the strength coach, and now the recruiting process is over. Let's get the real deal. What are we doing the first day I get there, and how do I get ready for it? If we're a team, we lift weights early in the morning, and I'm not a morning person, find a way to become a morning person that summer, right? If you got to run a 6-minute mile to make the team, if that's part of the deal, because your coach is old school, and it takes you 9 minutes to run a mile in May, well, then you got three months to figure out how to become a 6-minute mile person. But get the information you need and prepare for it, and don't show up to campus shocked that you can't compete with kids that have been in the program for multiple years already.
I like that sound advice. Yeah, start with reading this book because you can get a hold of that right away. So, Angelo, how can folks get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you or connect?
Great. So first, the book is on Amazon.com. Just put Angelo Gingerelli, the next 4 years. It'll pop right up there for you. Feel free to email me. I love talking to parents about the Little League thing. It's been a super cool thing I've been involved in the last 3 years. Hope to be involved in a bunch more. So it's Angelo, Angelo, Gingerelli, Gingerelli @gmail.com. And then on Instagram, it's Mr. Fifth Round, MR, the number 5, THROUND. Reach out, and those are the two best ways to get in touch with me.
Excellent. I'll put that stuff in the show notes for the episode. And anything else you want to add at this time as we part ways, Angelo?
I got a question for you, man. Being an official, avid listener, are you really a Reebok pump guy? Is that one of your things you're into?
Angelo, I would have loved to have been a Reebok pump guy, but I went home after a couple kids came to those. This was what, late 80s, 89, 90, whenever they came out. Yeah, I mean, it was like 90. I remember like 4th grade, or somewhere 5th grade, and they came out, and I went home. I said, Mom, I want to get a set of those Reebok pumps. She said, you know what her response was, Angelo? She goes, do they sell them at Payless shoes? And I'm like, I don't know, but let's go. My mom drove me to Payless shoes because that's where we got our shoes. Now, I didn't grow up poor, but we definitely didn't have money for Reebok pumps or Air Jordans. And we went there, and they had a fake version of the pump. They had a fake version. You could probably find a picture. It was on the side. It was bootleg. I love the pump so much. I got this bootleg version, and I wore it for 2 years at my school, getting made fun of because everybody else had the pump on the front, like the little basketball thing on the front, on the tongue. I didn't have that. Mine was on the side. It was bootleg. Some of y'all are laughing. Some of you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, were you a Reebok pump or a Jordan?
Man, I went super hard Team Reebok in that debate, and I'm still doing it now. Every October, I only wear Reeboks for the whole month. It's called hashtag Boktober on Instagram. I take part in that every year. So same thing, man. I was lucky. My parents got me one pair when I was younger, and I wore them for probably 2 years straight. And then I got older, and they retro release them. I buy them whenever they come out. Man, it's super cool. I like that you like that.
Those are the cool shoes. And back then when shoes weren't that cool and there weren't a lot of options, having like a basketball thing on the front, you could pump up on the tongue and it inflated. It was just the coolest thing. Do you think that having that tight fitting shoe is good or bad? I know we're running out of time here, but I just want to.
You know what? As a lifetime sneaker guy, I think the idea of a really tight form fitting shoe is what's being worn now by most, let's say, basketball players, baseball players, stuff like that. I think the pump, as cool of an idea as it was, I don't think worked functionally the way you really needed to work out in. But that idea of a really tight shoe that's formed to your foot and moves with your body has been the model of the last 10, 15 years of footwear. So yeah, they're probably a little ahead of their time and had a great idea that got perfected later on.
There's something you can do, parents, if you can't afford it. It's not cheap, but it's easier now with being able to send things in. Go get soles that form fit. They send you a thing, you step in it. Your kid, get their cleats if they're done growing, especially, and they don't need to get a new size every year. Get your kid's foot fitted. They'll send you a box. You step in it with both feet. You send it back, and they'll send you an insole that fits in your shoe. I got one when I was in the Indians organization. They did that for me, and I couldn't believe the difference. Having my foot just the perfect shape of the bottom of my shoe to my foot. I felt 10% more athletic just with that addition. It might have been placebo, but it felt good. Hey, Angelo, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks, man. You're doing a great thing with this podcast. Keep up the great work, and I'm going to keep listening.
I love it. I hope to have you back sometime in the future. Take care.
Thank you.
That wraps up our interview with Coach Gingerelli. You can go check out his book on Amazon, The Next 4 Years. Highly recommended. And with that said, please leave a review, a rating for this podcast to help support it. And the best thing you can do is to share it with a few friends, some family members. Word of mouth is always the best, so that would be much appreciated. And until next week, let's take care of ourselves and our health so we can be at our best for our family, be there for our close friends, and so we can be the best coaches, the best support system for our young athletes, our youth athletes that we can be. Y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.